there is an abrupt fall at the end. So it's like you're stepping up on a ladder and suddenly you fall. That is called anticlimax. It's also loosely called a bathos. Hello and welcome back to NibblePop. Today we are going to look at the third set of schemes, the figures of speech, which are based on structural arrangement of sentences. A word of warning, the ones which we will be discussing today are not very easy to detect, especially if you are in an exam hall and you have a poetic passage in front of you. It will be difficult to identify these particular ones. I'll try my best to make you understand these figures of speech, but again, they will not be as easily detectable as you have seen in case of the previous ones. But if you follow this lecture, you will be able to understand them and you will be aware of the different kinds of schemes which we will be taking up today. More specifically, we will be looking at the schemes of climax, anticlimax, Zeugma and Chiasmus. Okay, so let's not wait anymore and begin the class. This is Monami Mukherjee. Welcome once again. The word climax is used in two different ways when we look at literature. On one hand, climax refers to the final point where a story, a plot, it progresses and reaches its highest level of tension. Okay, that is climax of a play, climax of a story or a novel. But when we are talking about climax as a rhetorical device, we are talking about a different thing. Now, the word climax, it comes from a Greek word which means a ladder. So, in a ladder, what do? You step up. So, climax is where in a line words or clauses are arranged according to their increasing level of importance, so that the final word is the most important word of the line, alright, or the final clause is the most important clause. Now, it is preferable if at least 3 such words or clauses are present in order to notice a proper climax in a line. Okay, so let me give you an example. We are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven. This is from Ulysses by Alfred Lord Tennyson, and here he is talking about Ulysses's feelings about himself, about his companions. They have grown old now. They cannot do things which they used to do when they were young, but even now they have a kind of motivation, a kind of strength to go on an adventure where they will explore the world further. So this is given in this stanza. We are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven. That which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. So when these words are used in the last line, strive, seek, find, and finally not to yield. Yield means surrender. So the most important thing for Ulysses here is that he is not willing to surrender to anything. Alright, he might find things in the process, he might look for things in the process, but the most important thing is he will go on, he will not yield, he will not surrender. So in this line we have 4 things: strive, seek, find, yield, or rather not yield, where not yield is the most important thing. So this is arranged in a climactic fashion. So this is an example of climax. Now, why is climax used? First of all, it gives a kind of a structure to the whole line or to the whole thing. Second thing is it builds a kind of anticipation. You know, when you look at the first word and then the second word comes and then the third word comes, automatically if they have a a gradually increasing degree of importance, you wait for the final bang, okay, that word which will be a very climactic word, all right? And another thing which I have felt is that if you detect a climax in a line and you notice the last word or the last clause, which is the climax of the line, then you also understand what is very important for the poet. I mean, everything is a matter of priorities, right? For some people, wealth is a priority. For some people, peace is priority. For some people, revolution is priority. So, whatever is kept at the end in a climactic line is definitely something which the poet or the writer attaches a lot of importance to. Okay, so this is a way to understand the poet's mind as well. So this is what climax are used for. Let me just give you one or two more examples. Look at this line: no tree, no shrub, no blade of grass that was not owned. Now, when you look at the expressions tree, shrub and blade of grass, you will ask me that a tree is bigger than a shrub is bigger than a blade of grass. So they are not arranged according to their increasing size or anything, no. But look at the sentence. No tree, no shrub, no blade of grass that was not owned. It means that in this case, a blade of grass or owning a blade of grass is a more strong owning, a more strong power of possession than owning a tree. All right. Because grass is, when you look at numbers, the number of trees is always less than number of shrubs, which are again less than number of blades of grass. So when you look at numbers, then grass becomes most important. So this is also an example of climax. Now let's look at the next passage here. I'm just looking at the last two lines. A doubtful good, a glass, a flower, lost, waded, broken, dead within an hour. When you look at the four words, lost, waded, broken, dead, of course dead being a climactic end to this sequence, you see that this is a climax. Ordinarily, you will rarely find climax in the poetic passages which will be given in exams for you. However, in those exams where one single line is given and you are asked to identify the figure of speech, they deliberately give a line which is a climax and they want to see if you can identify. There you will be able to do it. But when you look at a whole poetic passage, it's unlikely that you will come across a passage which has a climax. Okay, according to my experience, people don't give that kind of passage. Now look at this. The holy passion of friendship is of so sweet and steady and loyal and enduring a nature. So you are building up that anticipation, right? All very important words, one after another, that it will last through a whole lifetime. You're waiting for a climax now, but if not asked to lend money. This is from Mark Twain. So the final end of the line brings you down. The meaning is, friendship goes on forever till you ask for money. And then this creates a humorous effect, an effect of the burlesque. Now, there is an abrupt fall at the end. So it's like you're stepping up on a ladder and suddenly you fall. That is called anticlimax. It's also loosely called a bathos. All right. Now they are almost similar terms. Bathos is derived from a Greek word which means depth. Anticlimax results from a change in tone from serious to something very random or silly or insignificant. So you are arranging things which are very important according to their increasing order of importance, and then suddenly there is a drop. And that creates a kind of shock which often results in humor or laughter. Again, this is usually not found in poetic passages which are set for exams, but you might come across, who knows, if they give a line and they ask you to identify, chances are that you will be able to do it. And there might be questions like which of the following terms are related to each other, and they give the pair of words anticlimax and bathos. There you can identify that, okay, this is similar to that, okay, so almost synonymous. Now we'll come to a very strange sounding figure of speech. It's called Zeugma. If you have done Rape of the Lock in your third semesters, you would know that a Zeugma means connecting two different ideas with one single word. And these two different ideas are otherwise very much disconnected. Usually a connector verb connects two different objects or two different nouns are associated with one single adjective. That is called a Zeugma. It's very close to its synonym synlepsis, just like anticlimax is related to bathos. Similarly, Zeugma is related to synlepsis, and often the definitions merge, they overlap. So they are very close to each other. Zeugma can play with the grammar of a sentence, or it can play with the meaning of things in a sentence. For example, if I say something like eggs and oats are soon broken. So what is the verb here? The verb is are broken, right? And it is linked to eggs and oats. Eggs are also broken, oats are also broken. Oats means promises. But is there any connection between egg and oath? No. I mean, you physically break an egg, but you can say metaphorically break a promise. Okay, you don't actually break something when you break a promise. Therefore, you can say that in Zeugma, what we find is there is a practical, physical association, and there is a metaphoric association. There is something which relates to your imagination. For example, he played with my scarf and my heart. So, of course, maybe he was actually playing with my scarf. So, that is something we can say a direct association. And when I'm saying he's playing with my heart, which means he is manipulating me, using my emotions for his own use. And this is not a direct association, but a derived one. So here you have Zeugma. All right. Now, there is also a situation where you can see that there is one single verb and two different objects. For example, when I am gone, he works his work, I mine. This is again from Ulysses. When I am gone, this is a normal sentence. Look at the part after this. He works his work, I mine. In the part where the poet is saying I mine, it actually means I work my work. Okay. But instead of saying that, he's just condensing the whole thing and saying I mine. Okay. So this is also an instance of Zeugma. But it's better to identify Zeugma when it plays with meaning, as I have given examples of before. Pope's Rape of the Lock is full of Zeugma. Okay, as I was telling you, let me just brush up your memories, that line. Here thou great Anna whom three realms obey, does sometimes counsel take and sometimes tea. So remember that line where Pope is talking about Queen Anne, and he's saying that she takes counsel, counsel means advice of ministers, and tea. So taking tea and taking advice, both are connected with the word take. But both these words are so very distant from each other, dissociated from each other, that this creates a kind of humorous situation when you hear this. Again, another example from Rape of the Lock. Whether the nymph shall break Diana's law, or some frail china jar receive a flaw, or stain her honor or her new brocade. So in the first part, you have two separate verbs. Whether the nymph shall break Diana's law. So there you have break as the verb linked to Diana's law. Next part is, or some frail china jar receive a flaw. Receive is connected with flaw. So here there is no zeugma. The next part is, or stain her honor or her new brocade. Staining means when something is made dirty. So honor is stained, and then he is saying the dress is stained. Of course, one is physical and one is metaphoric. Alright, so this is an instance of zeugma. Another sentence might sound like, the storm sank my boat and my dreams. So it was a literal sinking for the boat. The boat actually did sink, and the dreams metaphorically sank. So zeugma makes use of two different kinds of objects by making use of a connector verb which applies to both but in two different senses. Alright. Now, what is the trick to identify a zeugma? Now, whenever you look at a line, try to identify the verb. Then you try to see whether that verb is attaching itself to two different objects or not. And are these two different objects dissimilar? For example, if I say, he took my pen and pencil box, it doesn't matter. Both are on the same level of practical life, right? It can be done together. But if I say, he took my pen and my dreams with him, that becomes something different. So, if there are two objects, it is not necessary that there will be a zeugma. There will be a zeugma if those two objects are not related or they do not belong to the same level of practicality or same level of existence. Okay, so then that's a zeugma. Now the final figure of speech which we are going to do today or look at is called chiasmus or chiasmus, whichever you want to pronounce it. This derives from a Greek word which actually means a crisscross arrangement, okay, placing crosswise, diagonal arrangement. So it's putting something on a crisscross way. Now this is something where concepts or words are repeated but in a reverse order. Okay, so they are not repeated normally, they are repeated with a twist. Maybe the subject, object, they are interchanged. The subject of a clause and object of a clause, they interchange their positions, or maybe some synonyms are used to give a parallel structure. But this is not antithesis. In antithesis, what happened? We are stating something and then we are stating that same thing using opposites. Here we are stating the same thing using synonyms or related words, something which will emphasize the first clause. Okay, let me not confuse you anymore. Let me just give you some hands-on experience by examples. Look at this line by Oscar Wilde. Life imitates art far more than art imitates life. So the first part of the sentence is life imitates art. Second part is art imitates life. So the object, subject, they change their positions, they alter their positions to give a sense of repetition. Okay, again let's look at the second line here. Never let a fool kiss you or a kiss fool you. So here the play is even more subtle. Here the object and verb, they are changing position or they are interchanging themselves or their own roles. The subject becomes verb and the verb becomes subject. This is very unique. So how to identify these? If you feel that a line is divided into two parts, there may or may not be a comma in between to separate the clauses. If you feel that you can see two set of things where there is a repetition with a twist, then that is a chiasmus, okay, a crisscross pattern. Again, another line from Don Juan. Pleasure's a sin and sometimes sin's a pleasure. So pleasure is a sin and sometimes sin is a pleasure. So the word sin and pleasure, they are changing their position and they are all building up one idea. And here I have given you examples where the words remain same. Okay, the arrangement changes or the parts of speech role changes, but words may be exact or may be related. Okay, so if we say that pleasure is a sin and sometimes sin is happiness, then that is also a case of chiasmus. It doesn't always have to be the exact same word. Alright, so I know that these four figures of speech which we have discussed today are not that easily identifiable, especially under exam situations. But this lesson will be useful if you are appearing for again any entry into services exams, where you might be asked to pinpoint a figure of speech based on one single line where you will be able to identify these things. All right. So now that we have reached the end of schemes, we have done 12 figures of speech under this category. We will move on to tropes, very interesting ones. We will first look at simile, metaphor, onomatopoeia, oxymoron in our next class. And just as we have done in case of schemes, we will also be looking at these figures of speech in details and with examples. We will have 3 lessons on tropes as well, and after that a final lesson will be prepared based on your suggestions and comments. If you feel that these videos are helping you, do leave a comment, because I really love to read all your lovely comments. So stay subscribed so that you get notified the moment my next video comes up, which will be on the first 4 figures of speech under the category of tropes. This is Monami Mukherjee signing off. Till our next video, stay happy, stay subscribed. Bye-bye.